Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive, an animal communicator, if you will, and Reiki master practitioner here at Animal Love Languages. And that little chirp was my precious 23-year-old Filbert. He's feeling a little molty today, a little bit grumpy today. I told him he only had to be present for the intro and then he can nap on my knee. So there you go, intro over. Here on Let's Talk to Animals, our first 2 seasons have really been all about demystifying animal communication. Like, what is it? How does it work? Who can do it? How do I get started? What can you do with it? And really just kind of unpacking the softer side of whole pet wellness. But here in season 3, I have decided to branch out because there's this point in the conversation that often occurs when an animal has shared something. Maybe it's a need or a want, or maybe it's a concern, or it's a confirmation that all is not well under the hood, so to speak. And that generates what I call the what's next. What do we do now? And so for season 3, I'm inviting a host of incredible, internationally known whole pet care practitioners working with different species and specializations, and just trying, putting the information out there that there's all kinds of ways we can address the what next. And the key to it all is understanding our options. What can we do? What's possible? So today I've invited Dale Logan, all the way from New Zealand, from DL Equine. She is an independent equine nutritionist. She has worked with many amazing beings all over the planet, helping to solve some of, I would say, some pretty darn complicated equine digestive issues, performance issues, pain issues, the kinds of issues maybe that even at first glance, you wouldn't necessarily assume that it's related to nutrition, but at the bottom line, food is our medicine. Food is therapy. Food is fuel, and it's important to look at the kind of fuel we're giving our beloved equines. And so, Dale, welcome. So delighted to have you.
Thank you very much.
And
Thanks for inviting me. It's lovely.
Oh my gosh, I'm delighted. And so just to make sure that I don't forget to mention it later, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, you can find Dale at dlequine.co.nz. I always like to invite our show guests to kind of rewind us a little bit and take us back to kind of the beginning, or just that point of intersection where you started to become aware that this was a passion of yours and a calling, and kind of how you followed that path.
Makes me feel so old when I think back.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, yeah, animals have been a part of my life since I probably got the love of animals from my mum and my dad, but mainly my mum. So we've always had animals, but horses, we mainly lived in the city, so I didn't have horses, and we moved around quite a bit when I was young. So I just used to go to riding schools. And I guess, like most young girls, got, absolutely, impassioned with the horses, but didn't own my own in actual fact until I was an adult at university, because we simply couldn't afford it. But I never lost that love. And animals, always part of my life. Even when I had to travel across half the country to go to university, there was always I have memories always of a cat sitting in my car traveling. I was a good sort of, back then, a 7 or 8 hour drive, and I'd have always a cat sitting in my car with me going backwards and forwards, and I couldn't live without at least a cat during those years. But I guess I knew from a very early age that I wanted to work with animals, and from a very early age I wanted to be a vet. And I think I guess that's fairly common with a lot of us. And in New Zealand, we only have one veterinary college because we're a pretty small country. And back in those days, quite a few years ago. It's not too different now, I must say, but they're literally, they'd take the top academic students. And although I went through university, and obviously I didn't get into vet school, but it was a strange time because I never you were allowed to take veterinary papers as part of your sort of general science degree. And although I passed them, you sort of, you weren't the top. Literally, they would only take about under 20 students a year or something like that. So I kept going, and did veterinary papers alongside other animal, mammalian physiology papers and animal breeding and genetics and all those types of studies. And eventually did a postgraduate and got more into animal breeding and animal nutrition. And it's funny, you sort of, it broke my heart that I didn't get into vet school. And in those days, you didn't get a lot of career guidance. But I look back now and I think, well, yeah, I mean, I'd still love to be a vet, but it's funny how life takes you on a different path. And I found my path to be, I love horse nutrition. So yeah, long story short, out of university, I went to work as a very young animal nutritionist for a horse supplement company. So gained a lot of experience through that. Had a few divergent years along the way of travels and actually other things. Went to work for our biosecurity ministry in New Zealand for a long time, but kept studying along the way. I'm one of those people that can't stop studying. My husband keeps saying to me, "Oh, just stop, take a break." But yeah, I just because back, I keep saying back in the day, I sound like I'm 90, but there wasn't actually, too many specific horse nutrition papers or anything like that. So I had to, specifically in New Zealand. So I did what I could while I was at university. I did a postgraduate, and then once out, I kept looking for more papers to do, and ended up doing. I've done so many papers now; it's ridiculous. But if you look, they are out there. There's quite a number from the United States, and I went through a few years at as an online student at the University of Guelph in Canada, and a few papers through the United States, and then I did many other things along the way. I ended up doing a study for a year in animal welfare legislation in New Zealand, because that's really, I found that's integral to who I am, is animal welfare. So, and that comes out probably quite a lot in my blogs and when I'm doing nutritional consultations. I try and look at a lot of different things, but yeah, animal welfare is central to who I am. So many sort of papers, extra papers like that along the way. And then I think I sort of got the impression a few years back that I always felt like there's not just nutrition. We can't work in a single area and ignore everything else, particularly when it comes to horses or any animal, so it's, you need a team of people, and you need to look holistically at the whole picture. And first of all, that led me down the path of equine herbal medicine. So I did probably 3 or 4 years, 4 years study. You couldn't do it in New Zealand. You can do that in Australia. So I gained certification in equine herbal medicine in Australia. So that was hugely interesting, and I saw some amazing transformations using nutrition and herbal medicine together. And then, yeah, just a few more papers along the way, and yeah, a few different roles in biosecurity, but still doing nutrition on the side until I eventually went, well, I can't keep doing both, and I want to go back to horse nutrition and do my own business. So that was probably a long, convoluted way of how I got here.
I love it though, because it illustrates a couple of really important points. One, of course, is that yes, our animals, like us, often need a whole team of supporters, of mentors, of guides, of cheerleaders to help us to grow into the very best that we can feel, the very best that we can be, the very best that we can offer. It also illustrates how, I mean, if you look back at my resume, I share this a lot, especially in this season, you don't find much coherence anywhere. And it's so easy, you know, and I feel like a lot of folks that tune into this podcast and a lot of folks who maybe have spent the last year or so kind of face to face with themselves and are kind of going, well, you know, maybe it doesn't all add up on the outside, but on the inside, there's something very intriguing that's being born, that's kind of coming together. And sometimes it doesn't really matter what our job description is. It's like, what did we learn? What valuable skills did we pick up? What insights did we receive? What changed in our heart space? Did we develop more empathy? Did we, even if it's just, you know, there's a couple different ways of going about finding your passion, one of which is being like, oh my gosh, I'm so passionate about this big, bright, flashing green light. And the other is, you know, a process of elimination. And I've often followed that one. Well, I hated that. Well, that sucked. Okay, well, you know, and it's no longer on the table. What's left? That's another great way to do it. And I love that about your story, and noticing what you keep coming back to, and how I think my first realization that there was going to be that animals were going to kind of come into front and central in my own life was when I was just literally binge reading books, any book I could find about animals, animal stories and animal personalities and animal traits and temperament, and whales, tortoises, porcupines, whatever crossed my path, I wanted to read it. And it was such a joy to me. And I thought, man, I would be a pretty happy camper if this was not something I had to shove into a little tiny hour before I went to bed, but it was something I could really, you know, dive into. Now there are, you know, days when I'm thinking, oh my God, what was I thinking? But it's okay, because the love is always there, even when there's also some biting, right, Pearl? Yeah. So that's what we call love and feathers, sometimes lots of them, right? So that really kind of brings us to the intersection of the work that you do, your passion today and mine, which is kind of like, I wanted to invite you on the show, not just because, you know, as an animal communicator, when I'm wearing that hat, I'm not trying to be an expert at everything. I'm not trying to be like, oh, you know, your horse says that he's having some gastric distress, or there's some coat shedding, or the hooves don't feel right. And I'll be like, oh, let me tell you what to do about that. It's like, no, I'm going to deliver the message about, you know, how that animal is feeling or what they need. And then we're going to put our heads together, and I'm going to reach into my Rolodex if that's a need that arises. And we're going to find somebody who can answer those more complicated questions. It's not about, you know, one-stop shopping here. I'm also a member of a team. And so you're open to animal communication being a part of your process, which is so important, because so many, of course, I don't like the word owner. It feels like keeper or carer is so much.
I was actually having that exact conversation with another animal communicator in New Zealand, Suze Kennington, and she was saying to me, because I've done the nutrition for her horses, and you know, she can tune into them, and she's done some communicating with my cat, and things like that. And so we talk a lot, and she was saying the other day, we often talk about welfare, and she said she hates the way, well, she didn't say hate, she doesn't talk like that, she's just so
Right,
lovely, but she said she doesn't like the way people will think of their horses as things, as objects
Yes.
to own. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's so important to understand that they're not a motorbike. They are, yeah, exactly that. They're sentient beings, and although I think most people adore their horses, I think sometimes we have to step back and go, yeah, but we can't treat them like a thing. They're not a thing. They are a being, and just, yeah, I'm probably not saying that very eloquently, but being aware of that more.
Yeah. I mean, the pampered pup in the purse kind of mentality that seems to have overtaken our society, where our pets are kind of like an extension of ourselves, or they're an aspect of our personality. They're almost like emotional bling, and it feels very inauthentic to who they are and what they need, and the complexity. I mean, animal welfare is, it's like the complexity of the task we're taking on. Like, it's extremely intimidating, or it should be. But there's a whole cohort of folks that I talk with as well from the animal communication side, where they're like, okay, well, I've got this information, but my current veterinarian, or my animal behaviorist, or my dog trainer, or whoever it is not really open, or they're going to look at me like I'm woo if I say, well, the animal communicator said that my horse told me. But you're very open to that, and so I'm curious hearing about. And of course, you have Susan's been a guest on Let's Talk to Animals too, and so I agree, she has a lovely personality. Yeah, so it is a small world, as it turns out.
Isn't it? Yeah. What I believe now, I've got to the point in my life where I believe that, yes, I'm starting to gather those people in my circle, and that are on the same wavelength as me, and that believe sort of in the same things as I do, and about animals and welfare, and that there's other things out there, and that it takes a team of people, and there's different ways of helping and being with animals and horses, and just kind of starting to gather that team of people, and then from there gathering more people into that, and enlightening them potentially that there's a new pathway. I mean, obviously we're always working, but yeah, I kind of feel like I'm on the verge of creating that circle of my people. Yeah.
And that's exciting. And that's another aspect of really why I created Let's Talk to Animals, is because, until I decided I was all in. I wanted to be an animal communicator, wanted to hang out a shingle, go public, GoPro, whatever you want to call it. I just kind of felt like kind of an oddball. Like, I don't really fit in. I certainly didn't fit in with my circle of friends back at that time. And I didn't really feel like I had people. It was like, maybe I'm the kind of, I was born, didn't have there wasn't a my people subset out there. And now I've discovered that I do have people, just because they didn't cross my path early in life. And so, if you're listening or you're watching right now, whatever your passion is, maybe it's something that you haven't encountered any people yet who are doing the thing that you're doing. Trust us that if you pursue that path and you keep, dealing yourself into what your heart is pulling you towards, you will find your people. I mean, I was 50 when I started, working professionally in animal communication, and that's a good number of decades to have under your belt before you find your people, but it's worth the wait. There's this, when you talk about animal welfare, and I love your passion for that, there's this whole host of animals, and in your particular case, let's focus on horses, that they end up getting labeled because their needs haven't been met. And then they go into this pool of animals who are multiple rehoming, or they're called difficult, or they're called aggressive, or they're called shy, or they're unpredictable is a big one. And
Yeah.
I've been struck reading your blog post and getting your newsletters how often this is something as simple as a switch in nutrition. And it can be so difficult just sourcing just getting the right product that's going to help their horse, just especially with COVID, feeling
Mhm.
like the just supply chain problems and all kinds of different things. And so I'd
Oh,
love to
huge.
hear,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Mm.
I'd love to hear like if there's anybody listening or watching and they're like, I just can't seem to get to the root of what this issue is, where would you start with them and just taking a look at their horse's nutrition?
Yeah, I totally am on that track that it takes a team. And, I believe there's a lot of people potentially in places like the United States, um, but New Zealand is getting there, but I'm trying to push it. And,
Mm-hmm.
to work with, you need a nutritionist and a vet and look holistically. I work with Trisha Wren, who's an amazing horse person
She's
and
also
animal
been on the
communicator.
show. Would you believe
That's
it?
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it takes a team of people. And so I'm really, really open to that. I look up to those people. I know they tell me that I too can learn it. But I think that potentially a lot of us have an intuition with animals. Some of us take it further when we can. And I've certainly tell people to reach out, and you can start with any one of those people, and but try and involve everybody. So when a client comes to me, I certainly gather a huge amount of information from them, to the point where some people can fill it out within half an hour. Some people will go, oh my goodness. But hopefully at the end of that, they sort of, it opens their eyes to, oh, look at the history I've put down of this horse. Look what's happened actually over the last 2 years, 3 years. Or it might be a new horse, and they might actually go back to that last owner, or think back, or what did happen before I got it. So yeah, it's about gathering huge amounts of information, not just on what are you feeding right now, but what happened, what the health of the horse. In New Zealand, we have our horses out at pasture, 99% of us do. And so that's a huge, actually, it sounds great. And I know, have clients in the United States that don't have that. They're on hay and a sort of a dry lot area. There's two sides to the coin. We have our horses at pasture, and that causes huge issues, because pastures in New Zealand is kind of like rocket fuel. It's not really made for the horse's gut, to take in great quantities. So that's a huge issue, and stress and the gut are huge drivers for the horse and its health. And it can go both ways. It can be really good, and when you get it right, or it can go really wrong, because there's kind of this nervous system that goes, and for the gut's upset, it immediately shoots up this nervous system and tells the brain. And that's, I think, where you get a lot of these behavioral issues that you don't want. And believe me, I know I am not a brave horse rider. I've always had horses, as I say, in my ridden, and then had my own horses in my from my early 20s. But I totally am of the opinion that you must look at everything you possibly can with the horse, because they literally don't have the brain. They don't have the prefrontal lobe in their brain that says, I will act up on purpose and I will do something with intent. A horse's brain is literally not there for that. It's that part of their brain that we have as people that can do that sort of thing. It's not in a horse. So if you have unwanted behavior, it is going to be, I believe, due to pain, or due to learning that behavior because of potentially pain or uncomfortableness in the past, or something's happened. That's why you get unwanted behaviors. So when I'm gathering information for a client, I gather as much information as I can. Some people can fill that information out on their horse really quickly. Some people, it probably takes them by surprise. In fact, it does, because they've told me. And it might take them 2 weeks to fill it out, because I look at everything, including, not just not just exactly what they're feeding now, but what were they feeding 3 months ago or a year ago? When did they get the horse? How long have they owned it? Who owned it before them? Not that person's name, but potentially they travelled from one end of the country to the other. And just like in the United States, New Zealand has different grasses. If I send a horse an hour down the road, they'd be on different types of grass. And in New Zealand, we do have the luxury, I guess, of most 90% of us have our horses at pasture. But that's a double-edged sword, because our grass is pretty much like rocket fuel. Horses weren't really designed to be stuck in paddocks with the type of rich, lush grass we have, and it upsets the gut so much. And in a horse, everything comes from the gut. I do have a saying that I tend to write and say probably far too often, that feed your horse from the inside out. You need to get that gut right and that gut happy, because the gut and the horse has a direct nerve pathway to the brain. And you upset the gut, it immediately tells the brain, and that's when you get a lot of these unwanted behaviors. And of course, there are other issues, pain in the body that can come out in unwanted behavior. And I'm the first person to say I'm not a brave rider. I'm a chicken. And I never say that someone shouldn't sell a horse if they don't gel with it, because then we wouldn't get at the unicorn that we want, if people didn't actually pass on their horses. But even if you don't gel with a horse, it's in their best interest and your best interest, even if you want to sell, to find out what these issues might be. And I totally believe in the what we might call the woo-woo. I wish I had the skills that a lot of these animal communicators like yourself do. I think a lot of us that want to or do end up working with animals have a great intuition, and some take it further than others, which is why I'll bring in these animal communicators like in New Zealand, like Trisha Wren or Sue Kennington, and to build a whole picture. And then there's, if you don't want to sell, there's certainly some amazing people out there teaching, the Warwick Schillers of the world and the Tristan Tuckers, in terms of horses and horse behaviour. If you've got the nutrition right, and there's no pain in other areas of the body because you've had a vet check all that, and saddle fitters and physios, because it takes a team, then you're left with behaviour that maybe I'm not saying everybody wants to take the time and effort, because sometimes with some horses you're peeling back layers for years. But if you want to do that, it just opens up this huge field of amazing things that can happen. I know I followed Warwick Schiller for many years, and I had just as an example, I have a quarter horse, and he was a reiner, and I just thought, oh yeah, I love quarter horses, and I saw this little guy rein, and I wanted to do that. But he got to me, and I didn't spend a lot of time with him before I bought him. And even being a nutritionist, I went, yeah, I'll fix his nutrition. He lost shoes every other week, and I'm like, well, I know what that is. I can fix his mineral balance. But what I realised when he got to me, that he was really quite shut down, didn't like people. He would turn his head away from people. He was really like, oh, don't touch me, don't make me do anything. And when I finally, took a breath, let him take a breath, before I did anything, and that's really what Warwick Schiller and those types of people are about, is learning. If you've got these issues and they've been going on, and you've tried everything else, and you've fixed the pain problems, the saddles, the muscles, and you fixed nutrition, you need to follow a new modality. You can't keep doing the same thing. You got to try something new. And the things that these people teach is incredible. The first time that you can get a horse to breathe out or and lick and chew and let down the stress. The first time that you can walk up to a horse, and like mine, it took 4 years before he would let me walk up to him in the paddock while he was lying down, and he'd stay lying down while we had a chat. To me, that was worth far more than any reining competition, And I'm not saying that competition's bad, and and I applaud those people that put in that time and effort. I'm far too lazy for that. But if you can do both, wow, you're straight ahead, for a happy horse, happy person. Even and for the next person that owns that lovely horse as well. So
It's extremely powerful imagery when we're talking about, that straight line between the gut and the brain, because now there's research
mm,
supporting that the vagus nerve, it's a 2-lane highway. It goes in both directions, and 90% of the messages go up from the gut brain to the brain. And
yeah,
so along the way, I've met lots of folks who are far more deliberate and informed about their animals' diet than they are about their own diet. And again, like
mm,
that's something we anchor back. We want whole family, interspecies family wellness. And often, what I'll find as an animal communicator is that animal is either manifesting some kind of health issue to try to get the message across to their human that there's something amiss with their health or their wellness, or it's a kind of a mirroring issue. We do tend to at some level resonate on the same
oh yeah,
frequency as the beings we keep close company
yeah,
with, regardless of species. And so you end up with a whole family of gut distressed individuals of
mm,
different species.
yeah, yeah,
And also just
absolutely.
realizing that it can take tackling it from multiple levels. And I love your image of peeling back the layers, because why should we view non-human animals as being any less complex than human animals,
Oh
especially when
yeah,
there's been past mistreatment or abuse or just dietary
mm,
imbalance or a lack of
mm,
agency, a lack of independent of being able to chart your own course. And it is going to, so it's like when we take that on, it's worth taking it really seriously. And it's also,
mm,
but it's also important to remember, we, again, just like when I'm wearing my animal communication hat, I'm not putting myself out there like I have all the answers to every single question. It's about understanding that if you have a question, there's probably somebody out there who can answer it for you. And it's about finding that person and
yeah,
making those connections
yeah.
and building that team, which is really,
I
really
think as
cool.
people, as people, it's human nature to want an instant answer. You want an instant answer and you want an instant fix. And I get that. And with clients, I have to take them back and go, well, you're not going to get an instant fix. Like, for example, with a horse, and we talk about the gut, and I talk about this feeding a horse from the inside out so often that, to introduce a new feed to a horse, that you have to take it so slowly because their gut is filled with these little microbes. And I always think of them as like a sports team, and they all wear different hats, and they get very, very used to what they're eating. And so be it hay or be it pasture or another feed, they tend to populate with the same microbes. It's the same coloured hat. And then what happens is we take them traveling, or we go to competitions, or we sell them to someone else, or they go to a trainer. And then not only have they got the stress of travel, they're immediately on a different feed or a different pasture and a different pasture species. They could go 20 minutes down the road in New Zealand and I've got different pasture. And what happens in my mind is that, if you will, the sports team goes, oh my God, we don't have the right like coloured hats players for that. And so they have a bit of a squabble, and they all go on strike, and they all throw their toys out of the cot, and that immediately goes up to the brain, and you end up with some really unwanted behavior. So it takes time to introduce anything new. And I think it's a fairly new concept, although nutritionists know it. It's about getting that knowledge out there to your average horse owner that everything is a stress on the horse's gut, which does affect behavior, from traveling to training to riding to its mates going away and it fence walking and also, having issues in the stable. Or, when you travel away for competition and you've gone from a horse that's got, in a pasture or in a lot and it's got areas to walk to being in a stable or a yard for 3 or 4 days where you compete, that's hugely stressful on a horse's gut. And that's when, I think a lot of the time that's when I get the comments from an owner that, they're really great at home, but when I take them away, they go nuts and I can't ride them and it's dreadful. I mean, there's multiple facets to that. There's obviously training and behavior modification and just getting them used to the stress of being out and about. But there's also that huge issue of the gut as well, being shocked and that little sports team going, oh my God, we don't have the right players for that, so we're going to throw our toys out of the cot and everything's gone to hell in the handbasket. So yeah, that's why when you add a new feed, it takes time. It takes 2 to 3 weeks for the gut microbes to get used to the new feed and populate with the right coloured hat sports teams and for everybody to be happy. But yeah, and so yeah, we do have a lot of issues in New Zealand with that, and it often comes down to our pasture, which seems to change every 5 minutes as well, which really doesn't help anybody. It's a constant balancing act. But then, and that's hard to get through to people as well. It's like, it's educating people that it always will be a constant balancing act. I can do your diet today, but you might have to adjust it next week, and the week after that, and the month after that, because something's changed. You might, like, for example, we've got foul weather in New Zealand at the moment. I doubt that anybody's out there riding today, and most of New Zealand actually is either raining or snowing, and so you might not ride this week, this month, and you might ride more next month, and and you might have mud instead of grass, and so you're feeding out more hay or less hay or more feed. So yes, constant balancing act, just like with people. And yeah, I think sometimes we tend to forget that. Yeah, which is why I love clients that come on board for a whole year's program, because then we can adjust, weekly and monthly as we need to, and that's so necessary, rather than a one-off fix. Yeah, there's no such thing as a one-off fix with a horse.
100 years ago, to travel more than about 30 or 40 miles in any direction would have been probably more than 3 or 4 miles. What am I saying? Yeah. It would have been a major endeavor, and we would have stayed close to home pretty much our whole lives and had far fewer choices. And now we're confronted with a global economy. We just have so many choices that it feels like it kind of comes with the territory, and our bodies haven't really caught up to that yet. And certainly our nearest and dearest interspecies loves, who most of them have logged far more millennia on the planet than we have, they are even more set in their ways. And so kind of at that point in the show where we talk about, if somebody is caring for a horse for the first time, where would you recommend that they start?
I totally recommend that. And I do have clients that who have sold horses, and they immediately get a new horse and they'll come to me, and that, I love that, because the horse is fine, and which is why they've brought them, but let's immediately do their nutrition. And that's what I'm all about. It's not just being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. It's about attempting to And you can, with nutrition, you can prevent these things, particularly gut issues and behavioral issues that come from that, and bad feed and all sorts of things, or just getting a bit more, that 5% more performance out of a performance horse. You can do that with nutrition. And don't let nutrition be the last thing on the list. Make it one of the first things when you buy a new horse. Make it the first thing after the vet check. And so that you know that, yeah, you've got that horse's feed balanced correctly for your riding, your pasture, your feed, and the supplements that go in there. And so, yeah, you're starting off on the right foot, exactly, on the right hoof. So that, yeah, you've covered your bases there, and you've increased your chances for longevity with that horse, increased performance and longevity. You want that horse to be with you for life. You want to pass it down to your children, and so nutrition helps you do that. So yeah, obviously I'm fairly biased here, but nutrition is just like, you got no nutrition, you're just on a losing streak. You're on the back foot already. So again, don't let it be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, but let it be one of the first things you do with a new horse, and learn. You don't have to learn what I know, and that's something that I thought before. I've had clients go, oh yeah, gosh, I knew some stuff, but I didn't know that. And I'm like, well, no, because that's my job to know that. I don't know all the stuff that you do in your job and your career, and that's why I'd go to you. We're all experts in different things. But owning a horse, you do have to educate yourself in a fair amount. But it's not hard to do. And myself and other nutritionists out there, we write lots of blogs. Some of them are a bit scientific. Some of them are, hey, the takeaway message is this. So there is a lot of education out there. But go to that nutritionist first to get that correct balance, because obviously we have the skills and the knowledge to calculate those things, and a lot of it's to do with calculations, but gather and knowing what information to gather in order to do that. And then just some good education from some good sites as you go on. And then when anything changes, which it does, come back to your nutritionist again, with your vet, with your animal communicator, because they can say, like exactly what you said earlier, there's something off in the gut, or there's something off in my feet. And that is just so useful and so powerful to get that picture and then immediately be able to narrow in on, okay, so there is something there, and what can we do about it? Yeah.
And it's worth thinking about, just like with our own nutrition or in our own diets, how many other issues will never occur if we just make sure that we're starting out with a food as therapy or food as medicine approach. Yeah. As an animal communicator, I feel like I still need to just be pushing my own boundaries and learning more about everything that's out there, so that when an animal shares information with me, I have some level of context for how that information could be useful to the pet parent or the horse owner or whoever it is that I'm talking with. It's like, chances are good they're going to be looking to me for the what's next, which is again where this season is coming from. And it's like, I need to, okay, well, here are some different things to think about. That empathy channel is already open, but it's just a matter of recognizing it, learning that it's there, recognizing how it tries to get our attention, and then learning to tune in and begin to trust it. It's almost at that level about developing a more trusting relationship with ourselves, because when we, again, it's that resonance.
Totally. I totally believe now, after, and it takes a while to go down this rabbit hole, as you say, and but I often want to say to clients, especially when you get a new horse, take the time to breathe. Allow the horse to breathe. If you if you went somewhere on your own, and younger or at any age, that'd be really stressful for you to be uprooted and put into someone else's in a new room with new people and new food, and someone new riding your back. It's hugely stressful and changing, and I just think that even if you are going to compete, and again, I applaud those people that have the tenacity and to do that, but take the time. Some horses need a long time, and I'm a huge believer in that, walking side by side with your horse. And I know a lot of people probably think, oh, I don't have the time for that. You got to make the time for that. If you want the best out of the horse for life, as a partner, in riding, or as in competition, or whatever you want to do, take the time. There's the nutrition side of it, to take the time to get them used to the new feed, the new grass, the new hay. But then there's the time, literally, it all comes back to breathing. I want to do this all the time, and I do this with my horse, and I'm a real huge believer in walking. I know there's some people out there that, and I apologize, I can't remember their names, but they do the 100-mile walk with your horse, and it just does so much for your relationship to walk on the ground next to your horse. And you don't have to do 100 miles. I'm not saying you have to do that, but if you could put in the time to do that on the ground rather than just getting on their backs immediately, I just think it pays off in dividends hugely.
It's so powerful, the imagery I think about when I travel, and how anxious I get, and how half the time I'm bringing my own food along with me, and all of the the different things that go into, and on top of it, the horse has to get used to you.
Yeah,
they have to get used to it's not just their
Exactly.
feed and their new living quarters. It's like they have to get used to you, and you have to get used to them. I'm a huge fan of breath work. There's all kinds of, and I've made several videos about different breathing techniques that I really like, because I need it, and I know if I need it, the beings that I'm keeping company with will need it too. When everything in your life has changed, imagine how you will need a moment. You will need to take some deep breaths.
And I am a science person, but the more you learn and the more you are open-minded to all this stuff, you realize that I don't even call it woo, because it's real, and they've done scientific research, if you will, if you're of that bent that, oh, prove it to me, and that's fine. There's scientific research that proves that a horse has a heart energy field, and which is larger than a human's. And so, you will find, if you stand next to a horse long enough, you will become in tune to their breathing, because it's all about an energy field, and that's actually proven by science. So, you can easily take that further and just have a sit and a think about that while you sit and have a think with your horse,
or a walk
as well.
You could go and have a walk and think about it. The entrainment of the one that's taking the deeper, fuller breaths is the higher vibration. And so if you can be that, it's possible to actually help your horse relax. Coming in with a relaxed and having cells full of oxygen. Oxygenated cells are happy cells. And so you're just having that positive intro. If you've got a nervous animal, we may not be able to calm overtly, like force calm on the animal, but we can offer calm in the form of our own calm self. Well, it's been an absolute delight to have you on Let's Talk to Animals, Dale. Please, if you could share anything, any of those listeners or viewers who may want to reach out to you, where would you recommend that they start if they want to work with you?
I have a website, www.dlequine.co.nz. I have a Facebook and an Instagram, DL Equine Nutrition. So fairly easy to find me. I do try and try and give away as much information as I can. There's lots of blogs and to read and to learn from, videos if you prefer videos. If you want to listen along there, and there are webinars also on the website. And if you'd like to work with me, one-on-one in a nutrition program, I have programs for one-offs, for new horse, anything right now, an issue that you want to address. I also have a yearly program, as I said, because as the seasons change and work changes and exercise changes and horses change. So that's a great yearly program to get onto. You get complete access to me all the time, pretty much, for a whole year. And then I also have a competitive edge program for those people that particularly compete and travel and stay away from home, because that's when it's so important that we get the nutrition right and we feed the gut right while that horse is away, so that it's happy, its gut's happy, and you get that bit of extra performance and longevity out of your horse. So yeah, all those programs are on there, and you can contact me or email me or Facebook me. I'm pretty much connected. So yeah, come
Fantastic.
on board.
Thank you again, Dale. We really appreciate your expertise and your insight, and most of all, your passion for the equines of this world, whose guts are, I'm sure, already thanking you all over the world. So, and again, I'll put the website in the show notes for those of you who have found Let's Talk to Animals, and this is your first time watching or listening. Thank you. First of all, we know you have lots and lots of podcasts and blogcasts to choose from, and the fact that you're here means you have a heart for animals, which means you're our kind of people. So we hope you bookmark this show wherever you found us, and return. Each week we have great new guests on a wide variety of topics, and always love to hear from you. Any topic or guest requests, I promise I will do my best. And of course, you can always find me, and you can find all the past archived episodes at animallovelanguages.com/podcast. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you, Dale, for joining us, and we look forward to welcoming you back next week. Okay, bye for now.
Bye-bye.